It's the On Stage podcast with Chris Robert. Welcome to another podcast. Tonight we have John Primerano. He's a singer, a pianist, songwriter, actor, which we're going to find out about, what movies he's been in, and author who has appeared throughout the mid-Atlantic region. He's also a musical entertainer whose repertoire consists of a wide variety of standard, easy listening, and original songs. Mr. Primerano,
Yes, sir.
thank you for being with us on the On Stage podcast. Can you just give us a little bit of a history of who you are, where you grew up, and why did you become a musician that you are now?
I was born and raised in North Philadelphia, and ever since I was a little boy, a kid, I was attracted to music. I spent a lot of time listening to 45s. We used to play 45s when I was a kid on Saturday afternoons, and I learned the songs, sang along with them, and my folks began to realize that I had a proclivity towards playing piano. I used to imitate Roger Williams. I meant to say a proclivity towards music. I used to imitate Roger Williams's Autumn Leaves on our coffee table. So we spoke when I was a young boy about possibility of taking music lessons, and I really didn't have any idea of what I wanted, but there were a few things that influenced me. There was, as a young man, Bobby Darin had a great influence upon me. We vacationed in the working man's Riviera, which was Wildwood, New Jersey, and they had Skellinger Avenue, which had all the entertainment down there. And as we were unpacking our car, I saw that Bobby Darin was appearing there, and that was even before he had Mac the Knife. And a couple of other things, like seeing the motion picture The Joker is Wild, and seeing people performing. And then later on, when I start to sing, Frank Sinatra. Well, I always liked Frank Sinatra, but I listened to a lot of his recordings. But getting back to the fact, my grandmother overheard the conversation about playing instruments, whether it was going to be a guitar, whether it was going to be a saxophone, whatever. And I used to come home from school for lunch. And this was right before Christmas. And the doorbell rang, and there was a man standing on my doorstep with a clipboard saying, "The piano's here." And I said to him, "I think you have the wrong house." I was 8 years old, and he looked at my address, and it was the correct address. And I called my mother, and she came in and she said, "You got the wrong house." And then my grandmother came back from the kitchen through the dining room, through the front room, and pushed everybody out of the way and said, "Bring the piano right in here." She had gone out without anybody's knowledge and bought a Wurlitzer Spinet, which is right over there. I still have it and play it. And my father attended bar part-time, and he worked with a professional musician. He was a teacher during the week, and he's discussed the fact me studying with him. And Tony asked to come over and see the piano. Came over one night and sat down and played, and I was just amazed. And my father looked at me and said, "Do you think you'll ever play like that?" And I had no answer at that time. And we began lessons after the holiday season, and I stuck with it.
That's awesome, John. So if that piano didn't arrive at your door,
Right.
was there another timeline in your life that what you would have been today, or would it all been
I think somewhere along the line, I would have been in music no matter what. I don't know. I don't know if I would have gravitated towards that, another instrument, or just sang, whatever. But I believe I would have been in the entertainment business in some way or other had not the piano arrived.
I take it that a lot of your family were musicians as well, or because your grandmother was so pushy, say, "Give me that piano. I want my son to be a pianist," because his brother's or his sister is or did she just like, you know what? He's 8 years old. Give him a new toy. Let him practice on the
No,
piano.
not at
No.
all. There are no musicians in my family.
Oh wow. Okay.
I'm an only child,
Mm.
and as I said, when my grandmother got something in her mind, that was it, and she just went unbeknownst to us and got the piano. But it wasn't to satisfy, like you say, a new toy or anything like that, or he's going to play the piano. It was because I sang around the house all the time. When we went on vacation, we would drive from 10th Street in North Philadelphia to Wildwood, New Jersey. And in those days, there was no expressways or parkways or anything. And I would stand, they would tell me I would stand in the back of the car and I would sing. The radio would be on, and I would sing all the songs on the radio. So that was kind of a clue that I wanted to be in the music business.
So can you give the audience an idea of the artists that you used to listen to back then and the artists you listen to today?
Sure. Excuse me. I had a little tear come out of there, I guess. Well, when I was a young guy, the artists that were popular, as I said, there was Bobby Darin, there was Connie Francis, there was Paul Anka, Neil Sedaka, and the guys from Philly, Bobby Rydell, the late Bobby Rydell,
Oh yeah.
whom I had the pleasure of appearing with at a festival in South Philadelphia, and Frankie Avalon came out of there. But then there was the older acts, when I was younger. The Four Aces, Al Albertson, Four Aces, who I eventually got to know and become friendly with Al, and appeared on his TV show, his first TV show when I was a teenager. And let's see, who else was around then? There was, well, if I mention some of them, you'll think I'm 100 years old,
No, I know plenty of them. Like this Dean Martin. There was
Dean Martin,
Sammy
yeah.
Davis Jr.
Sure.
There's a lot of.
But we had records by Teresa Brewer. We had
Oh wow, yeah.
by the McGuire sisters, by the
Nice.
Fontaine sisters, the DeCastro sisters. Anything that was popular. There's a song that I do, "Teach Me Tonight," that I still enjoyed the most by the DeCastro sisters because I grew up listening to that.
Are you the type of person that actually wishes that they could have performed on Lawrence Welk?
Yeah, you know what? Lawrence Welk had a lot of great musicians,
Mm-hmm.
and he knew his audience. I mean, he got a lot of flack about kind of being corny and whatnot, but I'll tell you, the people on that show were all fine players. As a matter of fact, I went to college with Mary Lou Metzger, who became very, very much associated with the show and the Welk organization.
That's amazing. Wow. So, what do you think is the hardest part about being a musician, and what's the best part about being a musician?
I think that the hardest part about being a musician, at least for me, is when you run into an indifferent audience. There's a British saying that there are no bad audiences only, or there's a saying that no bad audiences, only bad performers. The British say there's no small parts, only small actors. But I read Mel Torme's biography. It wasn't all velvet. And he speaks about that, that sometimes, you have a tough crowd that you just can't reach, or they're indifferent, or eventually they come around. That's the tough part for me. The best part for me is when I was fortunate to build a nice following and people come to see me. And when they come to see me and I perform, and things just get, as musicians say when they play, in the pocket, and everything, you could recite the phone book and it goes over. And when you have a night like that, it's just you float home.
Who would you say would be your type of audience and your fan base? Are they more sort of around your age, or do you have any young folk who say they love their music, they just love listening to you?
Well, I don't know how to take that when he said around my age or young people.
Don't worry, I can edit it out if you want.
No, you don't have to. I'm only kidding with you. No, I would say that I have a fan base of people of all ages. I have people younger, than me, and I have people my age. I have people older than I that come to see me perform, come to my shows, and my concerts, and all the years that I worked the lounges, down in the trenches.
So you only know the piano instruments, or do you know any other instrument?
No, I played clarinet when I was in high school. I was told wrongly that I needed to know a second instrument to get into a college of music.
Wow.
And so I approached my band instructor and asked him if I could take lessons on trumpet. Well, he was a clarinetist. And I think for the fact that they would have to bring a trumpet teacher in, he decided he needed another clarinetist in the marching band. And because you can't be in a marching band with a piano, but in the marching band and the concert band. So I learned clarinet, and I wasn't going to give Pete Fountain any sleepless nights,
Nice.
But I learned clarinet. And then later on, my first semester of college, I took some guitar lessons, but college just got to be so intense at the end of that semester between my exams in the College of Music at Temple University, as well as my academics, that I put the guitar aside for a while. But excuse me, I did study arranging privately, and I was a composition major in college, which also included orchestration.
Now, was it the influence of other artists that you've seen perform? Um, do you play like them, or do you just play the way that John Primerano plays?
I think I play the way I play. I don't think I've ever played a song the same way twice.
Okay.
I've had people say to me, "Oh, you must listen to a lot of Earl Gardner because I hear Earl Gardner in you," or "You must listen to so and so or this person or whatever." And pianistically, I didn't. If I play like anybody, I play like my first teacher. And I've had other teachers after that. I studied with a gentleman named Alexander Fiorello, who was only one of 6 students of Latimer Horowitz, who was
Yeah.
considered the 20th century's finest concert pianist. And I studied serious music with him. And but throughout the years, yes, I've become a better pianist. But I listen a lot more to vocalists. And I listened a great deal to when I decided that I wanted to add singing to my performing. I listened a great deal to Frank Sinatra, and there was a time I listened a lot to Mario Lanza too.
Mario Lanzo, good choice. Yeah.
I don't have a voice that would even be in the same ballpark as Mario Lanza's, but I had that crooning style of Frank Sinatra, and the thing about it was that I tried to learn from the master, and there's so much talk about his phrasing and his breath control and things like that, and that all came out of a magazine article from Life magazine in 1965. And he writes in that he didn't think he had the best voice around,
Hmm.
so he learned, as we all know, who have any knowledge of Frank Sinatra, that he learned his breath control from listening to Tommy Dorsey. And he used to swim underwater holding his breath and reciting lyrics in his mind. Well, I had no access to a swimming pool where I grew up. And so what I would do was I would take a breath and I would hold it and start a song on my head and say I would start at the red car, and I would pick a spot down the street like a telephone pole, and I would see if I could hold my breath and see how far I could go with a lyric until I got to that telephone pole. So consequently, my breath control became enhanced, which made me allow me to carry over into more measures the same way Frank Sinatra did, and that was the big influence on me um, of Frank Sinatra's technique.
Well, we certainly love Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin and also Perry Como.
Mhm.
Um, do you have you considered your vocal range, what it would be? Are you more of a tenor? Are you more of a crooner? What would you consider yourself?
I'm a
People say
baritone. I'm a baritone.
you're a baritone, like very
Mhm.
low, like this,
Yeah.
because I'm a baritone and falsetto and tenor. So my vocal coach said I was a baritone. So
Baritone, yeah.
I decided to call
Well,
myself a tenor, but I
I
can go
don't,
low
I
like
don't.
this.
There you go. I don't get into the falsetto um, range, but some people have referred to it as a high baritone. So I would say that in any choir that I sang in whether it was high school or it was college, which was required, I was always in the baritone bass section.
When you're doing a performance, for instance, singing your song "Gone Without" or many of your other songs that you sing in your own language as well, I've El Di La,
Right, Aldila. Mhm.
yeah. Um, and I take it that do you know any other languages that you sing in, or just
Um, I know a couple of Hebrew songs,
oh, that's nice. I know
um,
too, yeah,
and but I've sung a couple of songs in Italian,
yeah.
and but other than that, I stick pretty much just to English.
Well, that's right. I was gonna ask because I want to know if you do some opera as well while you're playing.
Oh no, no, I wouldn't even fool myself into thinking that I had that kind of voice. The only opera experience I had was when I was 12 years old. I sang in what was called the All Philadelphia Elementary School Boys Choir, which was the precursor to the latter day Philadelphia Boys Choir. And there was 368 kids from every elementary school in the city.
Wow.
And one day when we went into our sectional rehearsals, one of the teachers who were monitoring the rehearsals walked by and listened to myself and two friends that I had gone to school with, and he said, "I want you three to stay around if the rehearsal was over." And our rehearsal was from 9 in the morning to 12 in the afternoon on Saturday mornings.
Oh, okay.
So at the end, when everybody left, there was 40 kids left.
Mm.
And then we were told that Bizet, who had written the opera Carmen, had written an optional street scene. And in this production that was coming to Philadelphia, they decided they were going to use that optional street scene, which these street urchins would follow the Spanish soldiers as they marched on from the wings and mimic them and do this optional piece of music. And so we would rehearse an hour after the regular rehearsal for the opera. And the opera starred Franco Corelli as Don Jose, who was the highest paid tenor in the world at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and
Wow.
the famous Marilyn Horn, who was
Yeah.
at that time was a really rising soprano and making a great career for herself.
Well, that's wonderful. And now look where you are now. You got beautiful vocals. Love listening to your music. Do you
Thank you.
think it's possibility that you could learn anything from playing of like Billy Joel or Elton John? And
Well, I've included some Billy Joel tunes in my act. You know, I won't say that I've included Elton John, but I've included a few things like "Just the Way You Are,"
oh yeah,
my life, things like that. Um, I mean, I listen. I've done things from the repertoire of the Eagles. You know, I play a Beatles medley. With just piano instrumental. Um, no, I kind of touch on all bases.
so that's interesting. Well, what's your creative process when you write a song? Is it the lyrics first or the music?
Well, at this point, neither. It seems as though the lyrics come as the notes come. My first thing is that I start off with a title. I have to have a title before I do anything.
Really?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
That's odd.
And yep.
So if
No,
you wanted to
I
write a
don't.
song
I
called
don't think it's odd because I think a title gives you an idea where you want to go with the song.
okay,
And then I kind of noodle around on the piano, and if I come up with some melody, um, you may look on the recordings that you have there. The first song is called "Maybe Someday." That was a song that gained me major airplay and on major stations, and
nice.
I wrote that song in 40 minutes. The song almost wrote itself. I sat down and I played a phrase on the piano, and I heard the words "maybe someday" in the first four notes, and 40 minutes later, I had the tune.
It's amazing. So if I threw out something like "Over My Shoulder," you could literally write a song with that "Over My Shoulder" in there.
Well, if I wanted to use that as a title, yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. Um, so John, some people feel that there's no need to record any music or any new music, that it's all been done before. What do you tell them?
I don't think that's. I really don't think that's an accurate um, phrase. There's always got to be new music. You know, we're into a phase now that I could have only wanted to strive for when I was younger, um, with all these standards being recorded, which is now called the Great American Songbook. When I began playing and everything, you had to have a record to get anywhere in the business, and I would go to New York and they would say, listen to what's on the radio, you know, and try to write something in the style of this or try to write something in the style of that. And now there doesn't seem to be any room for new material. Everybody's doing the standards, which are great, which I would have killed to do when I was in my 20s or my 30s. I would have loved to do that. And they eventually became my stock and trade. But I had to stay up on was popular music. And I used to do things from Saturday Night Fever. I used to do Staying Alive and things like that, as a piano and vocal soloist. With a drum machine, and I used to use a Wurlitzer electronic piano with a wah-wah pedal, and people would get up and dance like John Travolta, and because I worked the seashore areas, which were lounge jobs, but as much as I love the standards, I tell people that music didn't die with George Gershwin or Cole Porter. And my argument is that, and maybe it's because of the type of music I write, that if you want to keep that vibe, because if you look, just about everybody, whether they're known or unknown, or they're making a career, they've all recorded Someone to Watch Over Me. They Can't Take That Away From Me. There's like 1,000 new versions of those songs. And I say new stuff should come out in the genre so you can keep that genre alive and be more viable. So I think there's always room for new music. But to me, it has to be melodic, and lyrically it has to make sense.
A friend of yours, she's got a granddaughter, and she says, I want to hear Britney Spears' song, Don't Let Me Be the Last to Know. Would you actually learn how to play that and sing that just for her?
Well, I would look it over
Mm-hmm.
to see, but you also have to understand that an age factor does come into that.
Okay.
And there are only certain amount of songs out there today that somebody like me could get away with, because I even had this conversation with the secretary to a man that I studied with, who was a very successful songwriter, Russell Faith. And we were talking about songs, and she said something about doing songs that you can get away with. And it's true, you get to a certain age, and those songs just are not viable to do and get away with. You know what I mean? It's like seeing a woman, a matured woman, trying to dress like a young kid, like a young girl.
That's true. You just try to play with what you can play and get away with. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But that sounds interesting. But so, in your opinion, what constitutes a good live performance?
That's a very good question. But I think, for me, a good live performance has to be musical on the part of the performer and any arrangements that they have. I think it has to be commercially successful and artistically satisfying. Do you understand that? What I mean by that? It has to be commercial enough that people will come and see you and like it, but it has to be artistically satisfying, not only to you, but to people who don't even know it's artistic. I don't like to see what I call a grassroots performer. I don't like to see somebody get up, jump in the audience and shake hands and all that kind of stuff, because a lot of times when you see a performer do that, they're taking your mind off the fact maybe they're not that really talented. I like somebody who engages the audience, so that when the people leave, they say, not only did so and so sing great or play great, but they entertained us. That's what's missing, I believe, in today's so-called entertainment business, is the entertainment part. And that's one thing we spoke a little bit about on our messages. That's one thing you could never accuse Jimmy Durante of. Jimmy Durante was an entertainer.
I'd like to hear about that story in a second. So you could basically, if you wanted to, take a Christina Aguilera song, take a Josh Groban song, and you can make it a Primerano-ish song. You can put your own spin on it. You don't have to. You just sing it the way you want to sing it.
Right.
Honestly, I love Dean Martin. I love Sammy Davis Jr. I love the way Perry Como. I love all your music. I've heard all your music. I was just asking because they have something called AI now, and it can actually write music. And I've heard some of it just recently. They took the little part of, let's say, Eleanor Rigby, only fed about 8 seconds of that song into the AI, and it wrote the rest of Eleanor Rigby. It sounded nothing like Eleanor Rigby, but it sounded pretty good. But although it used the Beatles' voices, it was just gibberish. There wasn't even, you couldn't even understand. It was just gibberish, but you could swear it was a Beatles tune. And I'm afraid that somebody of your stature and talent and others could be out of a job. Who gets paid for the music? The programmers.
Right.
They're the ones that created another album of your work or who's ever out there.
To go back to your earlier question about what's hard about the music business, I have to add to it high tech, exactly what you're talking about. Because if they're getting into that type of thing, I was not aware of that. But if they were getting into that type of thing, then it's going to become a scary business.
No.
It's going to be even more scary than it is now.
I agree with you. So John, what is your approach to performing on stage? Like you're standing there, they're about to introduce you. Do you have like the handkerchief? You take it out of your pocket and you like dab your forehead because you're sweating, and you're like, you're not nervous at all. Ladies and gentlemen,
No.
John Primerano. You go to play your music, boom, done.
I generally take a sip of water
Okay. I didn't get any of
before
that.
before I go out to perform. But I'm not at a point where I'm nervous, that I'm shaky, that I'm afraid that I'm going to be judged or something like that. What I get is more anticipation. I can't wait. I can't wait till and as the time nears to get in front of an audience, I can feel myself rev up. And then once I get out and I sit down at the piano and I'm in front of the microphone, I'm home. Hopefully, the audience will like and accept what I do. And but I worry about that when I don't get any kind of response. So, I know you're out there. I can hear you breathing, kind of a thing. No, I'm only kidding. I feel pretty confident. I tell you, at this stage of my career and life, if I wasn't confident, I should be either out of it or doing something else.
Yeah. With me, like I'm a tenor myself, and I know you're talking something about you're going to perform and you have all these people there and you're kind of nervous. With me, it was like I went to sing a song. There were like hundreds of people, and like they're not here to see me. I mean, we had others playing too, like in a recital. And I sat down and I saw all these people. Oh my goodness, I can't sing more in front of more than 80 people. There was like 200-300 there. And everyone went up and did their song or their singing. And I realized that the people in the audience were either family members or friends of those that were already performing. Once they finished, they came and gathered them and went home. So by the time it was my turn, there was only like 40 people left in the auditorium. So I'm like,
Really?
thanks. I thought I'd have to sing in front of 300 people, which I'm not ready yet.
Well, I'll tell you something. It's really nice to be around people who enjoy what you do and a small intimate crowd can be really great, but I enjoy playing to large audiences as well. You know, I do. But I guess I'm more of an more intimate of an act, though. You know.
Yeah, we can talk about that in a second. Let's go with so do you consider a certain type of piano, like a grand piano play when you play to large audience? Or do you just stick with like a Steinway or something? Like how does that work?
Well, it depends on the venues. A lot of times, I have an 88 key keyboard that I would have taken in venues that where I produced my shows with JPM Productions. Um, but there have been most of the time I've been playing on grand pianos that mostly have been Yamaha. But my personal favorite is a Steinway.
And do you think they have a certain type of sound, a different sound? Do you think it's it's the same sound to me no matter what I play?
No, I think Steinway is the Rolls Royce of pianos. But like it's like a friend of mine said to me one time, another pianist. He said, pianos are like cars. You know, he said you can buy a Cadillac that's a lemon. You know what I mean? And I've seen that happen in places that I've appeared, where they've actually had to come in and move a grand piano out and bring another grand piano in, because when I started to play to sit down at the piano prior to the performance, the keys didn't come back up.
Oh wow.
So, which reminded me when I was starting my career, I played in a place in Wildwood, New Jersey, and this wasn't exactly Carnegie Hall. Frank Sinatra says he was a saloon singer. I would love to sing in the saloons that he sings, and then I played casinos. I don't think he would like to work in some of the saloons I played because I came to work one night and I start to play, and literally again the keys didn't come back up once I played, because somebody had spilt a beer inside the piano in the afternoon. And so if the piano had 88 keys, about 37 worked,
So how do you deal with that? And also, if keys stick and then the audience looks bored, how do you reinvigorate your music so that the audience will start, oh, this is my favorite?
Well, may I say that I started young enough to be and played on some really, really terrible pianos. I played on and people call a studio piano today an upright. An upright is an upright that goes above your head and goes against the wall, and a lot of times had a piano roll inside it. And they had real ivory keys. And I used to play for a USO group, and we would rehearse, and those keys were chipped. And for the years that piano was in existence, they became smooth, and the edges were like razor blades. And
Wow.
more than one rehearsal, I left my blood from my fingers on the keyboard because they would just slice my fingers. So when I got later on, when I was playing during my college years, and when I started to work professionally full time, I learned to work around what I had to work with. One time I played for a vocalist when we were both teenagers, and after the first song, the entire keyboard just dropped.
Oh,
And the keys would only come up about that much. And they all worked, but it was like they were all muted. So you never know what you're going to run into. And I've had a great deal of experience. Now, not so much. Now things are a little better.
does everything have to be like super perfect for you to perform? Like, for instance, you're missing one of the pages of your music, or maybe there's one of the
Well,
keys is missing actually.
First of all, when I perform, I use no music.
Okay.
If I don't have anything up to a performance level, I don't do it. But
So it's all by ear.
yeah, you're right. It's up there, and I have to say to you that because of my background, because of the way I came up, and I said it before, come up from the trenches, because of having to deal with that, which eventually made me buy the Wurlitzer electric piano, which only had 64 keys. But because of that, today, right now, if I went to do a performance and had to use a house piano and it was less than perfect, I would just deal with it.
Oh, wow.
I
That's
would
what
not
makes.
say I'm not going to play. When I studied with Mr. Fiorello, um, he was asking me about my background. I knew him from Temple University, but we had never crossed paths, except that his cousins used to come and see me play down the South Jersey Shore, and I used to give him messages when I came back to for my next semester. And then many years later, we ran into each other, and I had the desire to go back and study serious piano. And when he got to know my background more, now I was a kid when I was playing for these USO groups. I was 15 years old, and I told him that, and I told him about the piano and how it would slice my thumb when I would play like an arpeggio or something. And he said to me, "I wouldn't play on that piano." I said, "Then you wouldn't have got the $5."
That's funny. So do you think it's a duty of every artist to put his personal emotions into the music he plays?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, without a doubt. I
And why do
work
you
with a
believe that?
young man who writes songs and sings and plays. He doesn't want to do it professionally, but I work with a young man, um, and I tried to impress upon him to read the lyrics of the songs that we would work on. And I said to him, find out what the song is about. Find out what it means to you. Try to put yourself. This may be almost like a Stanislavski method, to have something relate to you, as they say in the acting profession. But if you find something in a lyric that relates to you, you can get that out playing wise. And I would constantly say to him, read the lyric, and then play the song, and put into your playing what the lyric says.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, your emotions have to be involved in that song that you're in the song, and if it's a solo piano composition, um, whether you're singing a Schumann art song or Schubert art song, your emotions have to be in that. I mean, why do it if there's no emotion in it? You're supposed to be trying to reach people,
And you
make
think people
make that
and
experience for them, walk away. I mean, I worked at it very hard, and the first time anybody ever came to me and said, "I felt you were singing that song just to me," my answer was, "Then I did my job." And I can't tell you how much that I appreciated that, as well as if I played a piano solo. If you get that kind of response, then you know you're doing your job. You anybody can play the radio, or I'm dating myself. I was going to say put money in a jukebox, but even in recordings, you find emotion.
let me see if I can find one of your songs here. I wanted to ask you, so when you play It Had to Be You or Ace in the Hole or Somewhere South of Here,
It Had to Be You was written like in 1924 by Gus Kahn and lyricist and a gentleman named Isham Jones who wrote the music.
Okay.
Those lyrics tell a great, great story. And for many years, that particular song was done as a very, like an up tune. You know, it had to be you, it had to be you. If you slow it down, as I did on my CD, I think the lyrics, as well as the music, I think they give a whole different perspective on the song.
Okay, so what about Again? Is that one of your own?
No, that's a song that's been a favorite of mine since I was a little boy. That was written from a movie called Roadhouse, not the Patrick Swayze motion picture.
I was thinking that one.
This was a movie with Richard Widmark and Cornell Wilde and
Yes, I love Richard Widmark. Yeah.
In fact, she played piano and sang it. And the first song she did in the movie was One for My Baby and One for the Road. And then they wrote the song. Lionel Newman wrote the music, and Dorcas Cochran wrote the lyrics. And in many motion pictures after that, even up to into the 60s, I just saw something the other day. I think it was the movie The Detective that Lee Remick and Frank Sinatra made in 1968. And in the background, you heard Again, and Again was like, if I have to be on a deserted island and somebody says to me, you can listen to 5 songs a day, 2 of them would, and the other 3 would change, but 2 of them that I would hear every day would be Again, by either Vera Lynn, Vic Damone, or Nat King Cole. And the second song would be You Belong to Me by Joe Stafford, the original version of it. And I love the Dupree's version. Again, it was a song that really, really touched me.
Well, it looks like you worked with great performers here. Pretty Perky Peggy King, Al Alberts, Vaughn Monroe, Woody Herman, and Jimmy Durante. So you actually met and worked with Jimmy Durante. Can you tell us what happened there?
Well, at the time, I was just about 15 years old, about half a year away from turning 16. And I had been selected from a police athletic league talent show, again with a group of people, and we would rehearse, and we did a couple of shows around the area, the Philadelphia area, outside of Philadelphia and all to build up for a very big performance at a very large venue in Center City, Philadelphia, for the anniversary of the Police Athletic League.
Mm-hmm.
And the guest star of the program, the man who opened up the second act, was Jimmy Durante.
Wow.
Along with his sidekicks, Eddie Jackson, and at that time, Sonny King. And he was just a wonderful, wonderful guy. I remember so many, there was younger children in the early part of the show, dance lines and things. And their parents, their mothers would run backstage to meet him. And he was swamped with his mother, everybody asking for an autograph. So I didn't even attempt to go over to get an autograph, but I was standing next to Eddie Jackson and I got one from him.
Nice.
And people were asking if they could take a picture of him. And of course, that was long before cell phones were out and you could take pictures on a phone. They actually had cameras, with flash bulbs and all. And he would say yes, and he would just get a pose like that, and he would take pictures with whoever wanted a picture taken. And this was during intermission. And then we went out and the show began. He did his act, and I went. Talk about a tough act to follow. I was the beginning of the second half of the show after Jimmy Durante.
Nice. Love that story. Jimmy Durante. I remember his bulbous nose. I remember, Spencer Tracy, Burt Lancaster. I remember those celebrity actors from 50s, 60s, 70s. And I was saddened when Jimmy Durante died and then James Cagney died. And like,
sure.
But I love that you actually met Jimmy Durante and worked with him. That's right. Awesome.
He was an amazing entertainer to watch, especially at that age. You know, I was playing piano, I wasn't singing, and you know, I got into piano accompaniment and everything. And I thought this was all great training, like being a piano accompanist and all. But people began to know me as a piano accompanist, and I thought I had more to offer. And Durante was one of the people that I watched, and I just watched how he worked that crowd, you know. And I mean, people loved him to begin with. I don't think if he walked on stage, I don't think he could do any wrong. Just to show up and not even do anything. Everybody loved him, and he was very, very nice when you met him in backstage. He was not a curmudgeon backstage and a great guy on stage. He was what you saw was what you got.
Wow. That's an amazing story. Now, John, tell us, how did you get into acting? And can you tell us about Creed 2, Rocky Balboa, Made in Chinatown, Goodfellas? Can you tell us about that? And The Sopranos as well. Yeah, like, what was your position as actor in these movies? Was it that they needed someone to play the piano in a scene, or were you up close and personal as an actual actor?
Well, in some things I was, some things I did background work in when I started. No, I never did anything musical in any of them. Funny thing is that I was playing in Philadelphia, and a gentleman used to come in here who was a retired detective, and he brought one of his daughters and son-in-laws in. They became acquainted. They became somewhat of a part of my following. Turned out that he was Andrea McArdle's grandfather, and that was Andrea McArdle's aunt. And you know, she was the original Annie. And this woman's name was Dot Britt, and they came to see me when I used to play at a place called the Mansion in Philadelphia, and then I would work in Wildwood, New Jersey at a venue called the Thunderbird Inn. And they came to see me there. And one night, after doing a set that was a little on the long side, I took a break, and Dot said to me, "You know just when to turn it on, don't you?" And I said, "Well, I have a pretty good feel for the room and the crowd, you know." And she said to me, "Have you ever considered doing any acting?" Then I said, "Yeah." I said, "I always thought in the back of my mind that I would like to do that." I said, she said, "Well, I work for a talent manager." And she said, "Do you have a business card?" And I said, "Yeah." And now I heard this all my life, and I would go in here and out there because people like to talk. But I knew who she was and who she was related to. And she said to me, this was a Saturday night, and she said to me, "I'm going to pass this along to the person that I work with." And she said, "If it's okay with you." And I said, "Fine." And sure enough, Monday, where I was staying, a phone call came from Philadelphia saying, take this number down and call these people. They called my house, and I called from down Wildwood, all the way down South Jersey. I called Bucks County, and first question was, "What do you want to do with the rest of your life?" And I said, "That sounds like a title for a song." And they said, "No, we're serious. We got your card from Dot Britt." And I thought to myself, well, I knew she would keep her word, but I didn't think it was going to happen this fast. So I said, well, I'm out of town. I'm out of town for the season. I won't be back, I said, until the end of September. And they said, well, when you get back in, come up and see us. And I did. And I didn't hear from them. And then 2 years later, I got a phone call and said, have you worked with Travolta yet? And I said, oh, yeah. I said, John and I were out last night. I took them out for a couple of drinks. I said, I showed them around town a little bit. And they said, no, we're not kidding. Have you worked with? I said, no. So my first thing I did, I was a non-union extra. And if you see the end of the movie and John Travolta running through the crowd, maybe if I turn this way, you'll recognize the back of my head. So that was my initiation in getting into film work.
Then you didn't really get deep down and dirty with many of these actors.
Well,
like Barry Bostwick, for instance, Robert Stack. Wow, that's impressionable.
Now he was a great guy. Robert Stack was a very shy man, and what I didn't know at the time was you weren't supposed to ask anybody to take a picture or an autograph or anything like that. And I had nothing with me, but I was in a group, and we were supposed to be Continental militia. And this one fellow had a camera, and he was taking pictures of the entire area, who was dressed in British outfits and who were in the militia outfits. And the fellow said, you want to get a good picture? He said, go over this hill. He said, the trailers are down here. He said, Robert Stack, John Glover, Jeremy Kemp are there talking. And we walked over a hill, and the fellow with the camera was standing next to me. And I said to him, if I asked Robert Stack to take a picture with me, I said, would you take it? And he said, oh, he got very, very nervous. And he said to me, he won't do that. He won't do that. I said, I'll ask him. What can he say? No. So they were talking. I went down and I excused myself. And I said, Mr. Stack, I said, I've always been a fan of yours. I said, not only from The Untouchables. And I start mentioning some other movies he was in. And I said, I'd like to know if it would be possible to take a picture with you. And all the time he had his head down like this. And he said to me, is it going to cost me anything? And I said, won't cost you a nickel. I said, I got my own camera and my own film. And I said, all you have to do is stand here. So the other two guys were going to walk away. And he said to me, well, all right. And he said, no, don't leave. So we got a picture of the four of us. Oh, it's on my wall. Yeah. Memorabilia. Yeah. But in Creed 2, I played a Russian reporter in that. Mm-hmm. But I've done a lot of principal work in what they call industrial films, and in a commercial for A&P Superfresh that ran on the Eastern Seaboard for a year, and it also ran in Ontario. So that actually turned out to be a very lucrative endeavor as far as residuals are concerned.
That's amazing. Have you ever been to Toronto?
No, I haven't.
It's beautiful. I've been living here for all my life, actually.
Really? I would love to come to Toronto and Montreal. I would love to. I have not been to Canada, but through the computer and Facebook, I've met all my life, the only Primeranos I knew were my relatives. And now I met Primeranos all around the world, and I'm very close on the computer with Primeranos that live in Canada.
That's awesome. So I see The Sopranos.
I wasn't in The Sopranos. I worked with people who had appeared in The Sopranos in a movie called Made in Chinatown.
Okay.
The premise being there was a Chinese boy fell in love with an Italian girl, so to impress her, he tries to join the mob.
Oh, wow.
And Tony Darrow, who was the guy in Goodfellas, if you remember the famous scene where the owner of a restaurant comes to Joe Pesci and says he'd like them to pay the bill, and Joe Pesci hits him with a beer bottle. Well, Tony's the guy that got hit with the beer bottle, and then he goes to Paul Sorvino to ask for help. Well, he was in that movie, and also Vincent Pastore, and Vincent Pastore was in Goodfellas, and Vincent Pastore was in the Sopranos, and Tony was in Goodfellas. So they were in this motion picture.
Well, I love that. Now, what about Unbreakable with Bruce Willis? Were you in that movie, or was that a walk-in part?
I was sitting behind Bruce Willis on the bus when he tries to flirt with the girl. He takes his wedding ring off his finger. Mm-hmm.
That was you?
Yeah, I was behind him. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. Wow. Wow, you're a jack of all trades. You're a musician and an actor.
I don't know if you could see this.
No, I can't see.
Okay.
I think you have to put it in front of the camera.
Let me see. I guess the camera's down here, huh?
No, I can't see it.
No, okay. Carol is much more computer wise than I. So she just took a photo of Robert Stack, myself.
Oh,
John
that's awesome. I can't wait to include
Jeremy
that. Yeah.
Kent. And he was, as I say, later on, he was coming onto the set, and we were standing around because we had nothing to do. There was a great many guys playing soldiers, and he was coming onto the set, and he was in costume at that point, and he was walking down a bridle path to go into this house, and I borrowed the camera off of this fella again. And he said, he's not going to stop for you to take a picture. And I said, well, let's see. So I lifted the camera up, and he stopped, and he turned to me, and I snapped a picture, and I said, thank you very much. He said, you're very welcome. And he continued, and he walked on to where he needed to be. Tremendous man.
That's amazing. Wow. Yeah, I know all these people. Barry Bostwick. Oh yeah.
Yeah, he was George Washington in that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very
can you tell us about JPM Productions? Now, why did you create that company?
Well, I had put my career on hold for a number of years, just say family issues, really. And it came to be that it was 10 and a half years. And I saw the business changing right before my father had open heart surgery. And when I became active again, it was a whole different world out there. It was a whole different business. So I had done shows before, and I had done concerts before, but I had been making my living in the lounges, and I decided that this was the time to do this, and I started JPM Productions, and along with Cal Ritchie, we got venues, and we'd get a venue and put on a concert. And they were ticketed events. And what I wanted to happen began to happen. We're starting to get booked in other venues where we didn't have to sell the tickets ourselves and things like that. And then COVID came along, and we did a bunch of shows, and then the movies came up. And I think I worked in 4 movies in 2018, and I worked in one in 2019. And we did shows throughout that period of time. And I had one scheduled in March of 2020, and then everything shut down.
Yeah, that affected you really badly, and it hit opera singers really
bad. As it did everyone. Mm-hmm.
So I can imagine. So did you do what others did and do shows on Zoom and concerts?
No, I never got involved with doing that. No.
What'd you do with all that time then on your hands?
Well, I wrote a solo piano piece, and I wrote a string quartet, and I would write up other shows, because if I came back to another venue, I never did the same show twice. There would always be a different theme. One thing I did not do, I was not a tribute artist. It wasn't John Primerano does Frank Sinatra, Perry Como. I never did anything of that nature. I always scripted my shows. And that was something I learned from Sylvester Stallone in Rocky Balboa. I was close enough to him in the shot that I would hear him run his line. Now, he wrote the script, and I would hear him run his lines, and he never ran in the same way twice, but the gist was always there. So I would script my shows, and I would have them written out just like a script. And then I would read them, and instead of putting the stress on to get every word right, when I did the show, I got the gist of what I wanted to say. I put certain things that I wanted to say, some certain humorous things that I wanted to say that I knew I wanted to do. And I went out and I would talk to the audiences the way I'm talking to you now, only I had more things that I wanted to hit, So that was different than some of the acting that I did. I was in like a afternoon dinner theater production of South Pacific. I played Lieutenant Buzz Adams in that. As I said, I was in industrial films for corporations and commercials, so you'd have to learn something to say, And in this, I relaxed with what I scripted after I wrote it. And that I have to say that I attributed to Stallone, because a lot of directors, or and especially the writers, they want what they wrote, and I understand it because I'm a writer myself. They want the words spoken exactly the way they were written, and since he was the writer, he could do what he wanted and get the gist across. And I was the writer of my own shows, so I did the same thing.
I was looking at that you wrote a musical score to Something for Hannah. I'm asking that because my cat, her name is Hannah. So I want to know. Yeah. So what's Something for Hannah all about? I know it's a book by Melpo Dennis Scotti. So tell me more about that.
Well, she has since left us, but her and her husband owned a jewelry store, and he had been a professional photographer at one time and used to do professional photos for entertainers. And so we knew a lot of entertainers in common. And she wrote plays in community theater. And one night they came to see me. I had known them for a number of years. And I had played a song I wrote and recorded called Philadelphia, which later became the theme song of a program on radio in Philadelphia. And when she heard that, she just approached me and said, "I got an idea, and would you want to collaborate with me?" She said, I'm tired of doing community stuff. She said, I want to shoot for Broadway. And I said, well, I got to be honest with you. I'm not a Broadway kind of guy. I said, but I said, I'll do it with it because I would like to see if I could write on demand. All my writing has always been from my own creativity, from my own imagination. And I wanted to see if somebody said to me, I need a song that says this, or I need a song for this scene, if I could come up with it. And she would give me some of the plot, and then she would say, I need a song that says, um, let's say the first tune, here a lie, there a lie. And if it was a song that was if it was a phrase that was good enough for a title, I would use it. Or I would take the gist and I would call her on the phone and say, I got your idea, but what you mentioned as a title, I said, doesn't quite work. I said, do you mind if I rework that into here? And this is what I think you want to say. And she'd say yes. And so we got together a few times, and then most of the time I worked over the telephone with her. And I wrote, including Philadelphia, I wrote 15 other songs for the production. And so we had a couple of bites on it, and unfortunately that didn't turn out. And in 2000 and let's see, I guess this January will be, I guess it was 2017, 2018, we lost her. And so she has relatives, and I just honestly, I just came across, we did a CD of her narrating the play and me doing the songs. And I just came across it earlier this year. I think it was in March, and I hadn't listened to it in years. I mean, years. And during the time that I was involved with family matters, I wasn't listening to anything. I wasn't involved in anything. I did write a couple songs the last year of my father's life, one based on their marriage. And so anyway, I listened to it and I thought to myself, gee, I forgot how decent this whole thing was. So I sent it around to people that whose opinion that I value and trust, and who hadn't heard it. And they came back with ideas, and everything seemed to be positive. So maybe I'll give it another shot and be in touch with her relatives.
Yeah, why not? That would work for you. I really appreciate that story and talking about it. I know right now that you have a current CD called Somewhere South of Heaven, which you produced and arranged, and it contains 5 of original songs,
Yes.
as well 5 standards. So I really like that. I listened to that. And also, yes, you also want to talk about a little bit about Italian Crooner's Bedside Companion. So you write books, you're an actor, and you're a musician. So how do you do all 3 of them?
I didn't write that book.
Okay.
I have written a novel, which after the first of the year, I intend to go back to and fatten up a little bit.
Okay.
I wrote a 1-act play. It's a 2-character play about the 2 characters in organized crime, one wanting to get out of the life. And I don't know. It's I write tunes. I work. But I always wrote nonfiction things. But the Italian Crooners book was written by a man named Richard Grudens,
Yeah.
and we became very good friends after that. And he included a chapter on me in the chapter of all the crooners, Jerry Vale, Al Martino, Frank Dean, Gio La Rosa, so many of it. And three of what he called the newer fellas, and I was one of the newer fellas. And they published a couple of lines from Maybe Someday and Saloon Song, and we became very good friends. And I contributed to about half a dozen of his celebrity books. He has celebrity profiles publishing, and I did the essays on Al Jolson and Frankie Lane. I got to know Frankie Lane in the last years of his life because of that book. And Al Martino, I came home from work one night, and Al Martino had left me a message, and he wanted to record Saloon Song and Maybe Someday. And I returned his phone call, and he then asked me if I would send him the music to it. And he said to me, there are two songs to be reckoned with, and in subsequent conversations. But his untimely passing prevented that from happening.
Appreciate you joining us on the podcast, and we look forward to hearing more music in the near future.
Thank you.
So, and everyone, please hit the subscribe button, and a lot of John's links are down below in the description, his music and his bio, and this is great. Thank you, John, very much. We really appreciate that.
Thank you very much for having me on the show. I've enjoyed it. I could go all night with you.
Me too, but I'm sure that
you got a little cheese to go with this ham, you know.
Bye, everyone.
Goodbye.
Thinking over what we had, did you really think it was so bad? You and I should be together every night and every day, wishing that you never went away. And what it would have been like if you only stayed, but you were gone without a warning, gone with no goodbyes. Love was living here with us the last time I looked in your eyes, but it's gone this rainy morning, like the sun that didn't rise, leaving just your memory, gone without goodbye. How it came to really show just how much of you I didn't know. I never even saw it coming. Thought our love would be the kind that could always stand the test of time. Looks like it was only in my mind, 'cause you were gone without a warning, gone with no goodbyes. Love was living here with us the last time I looked in your eyes, but it's gone without a warning. I played your game but lost the prize, leaving just your memory, gone without goodbye.